Welcome to the Soul Traveler Podcast, an exploration of conscious living with your host, Jennifer Mitchell of The Soul Experience. Join Jennifer as she explores the quantum realms of the subconscious mind and all aspects of spirituality. Driven by curiosity and a thirst for knowledge, topics will stretch the boundaries of your imagination and revive your mind, body, and soul.
Hello, Soul Travelers, and welcome back to another exciting episode. I am your host, Jennifer Mitchell, and I have a very special guest with us here today, Robert Althuis, who is an author, keynote speaker, and a spiritual mentor. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Thank you, Jennifer. And this is take number 2. We might as well be honest about it because I think technology kind of abandoned us in the first take. So we're going to do an even better one. We're going to do a second one.
Absolutely. And we were just chatting about that offline. So for our listeners, we had originally recorded this episode a couple months ago, but for some reason, the take didn't save. And so we're re-recording, but a lot of things have shifted and transpired in the world and current events since our original recording. And so I do definitely believe in divine timing. And I think this episode's going to release perfectly on time.
I agree. Let's dive into it.
Absolutely. Now, first off, you just got back from Peru. So I'm really excited to kind of hear about your trip and what transpired and why Peru. Was it for a retreat or a workshop?
Sort of, yes. But it was a personal trip. And I think many other people, I was really grappling with what happened ever since that dreadful day on October 7th, which in the Middle East obviously erupted a big conflict. And I had just launched my book and I was on the tail end of that promotion, which is always a whirlwind. And I wanted to kind of slow down and kind of take a breath anyway. And then so much happened in the world. I actually went to Colorado. I have some friends there that have a big farm outside Steamboat Springs, and I want to spend some time in nature and just reconnect. And I did that. And then my partner was leading a retreat in Peru, and she was on the back end of it. She had some extra time. And so I decided to fly in. Originally, I was supposed to do a retreat with her, but for a variety of scheduling reasons, that wasn't possible. And so I caught her at the tail end of that. And then we stayed for another 8 days in Peru, in the Sacred Valley, the Valle Sagrado, which is where Machu Picchu is, for instance, that general area of the Andes. And that's very, very sacred land. We related to the Inca civilization, but the Inca civilization actually was preceded by 2,000-3,000 years of other civilizations. And so the Inca civilization was actually a culmination from all these other very spiritually oriented, very close to nature. And we went up Rainbow Mountain, which is a gorgeous, it's almost 5,000 square meter altitude. It's almost 17,000 feet. And we brought a shaman with us and we had a beautiful ceremony between us two, but also just releasing some things on the mountain, as they say, and bringing back some inspiration and rejuvenated energy and reset ourselves. And so that was beautiful. And I've been back now close to 2 weeks, really kind of delving back into my work. And it's never been more relevant, to tell you the truth. With everything that's going on in the world, I think my book, Love and Truth, and what I try to bring into the world to those that are interested, I think it's never been more relevant.
Yeah, it sounds like such a beautiful journey. I hope to someday go to Peru myself. Yeah. So thank you for sharing your experience with us. I would love if you could start off by telling our listeners a little bit about your background and your journey and what exactly you do.
Appreciate that. And I'll try to keep it short. I'm an old guy, so there's a lot of background. But actually studying in the world, I'm originally from Holland. I landed here in the U.S. in my early 20s, and I really pursued this American dream. I went to night school. I got into real estate during the day. I got my college degree with great grades, and then I was doing quite well in real estate. And I went on to Columbia Business School to test my mettle with the smartest of the smartest, and that went quite well. I got recruited by GE Capital. And then I had a 7-year career at GE. I was top 1% after a few years. At the time, GE was still a company everybody wanted to work for. Now it's kind of dissolved into a shadow of its former glory. And I really started operating in this big, high level of business. I flew all over the world doing big, complicated transactions with aircraft and different things. And then I got into airport infrastructure. And then in 2008, I broke away from GE as the regulators came in after the financial crisis. And then I bought out what we call an orphan asset, and I got into business for myself. And so I pursued airport infrastructure development. So you imagine there's a whole bunch of real estate and cargo buildings and hangars and things like that around airports around the world. And I built those. And I raised capital for those among pension funds and private equity investors and various other people with fancy ties. I wore very fancy ties during dark days. And I worked with a lot of governments because obviously around the world, government, the municipalities or different quasi-government organizations are involved with airports. And I really got to see how big business was done at the highest level. I also got to see what really goes on behind the veil, so to speak, of that corporate elite world. And I was a cog in that machinery, and I did very well for myself. And in 2015, I exited with a very large sale of my portfolio. And then I got in my early 40s and I was like, why am I so disillusioned? Because I reached this proverbial mountain peak that we talk about. When I get there, when I have so many zeros on my bank account and I got that big house and the oceanfront community and the perfect wife and the perfect kids and all the cars and toys and all the shiny stuff I want, then I'll be complete, then I'll be happy, and then I will have made it. And so I got to that point and I never felt more empty and disillusioned inside of me, even though I had all these things. And so that was a profound spiritual awakening that at the time I had no idea what awakening was, but that kind of prompted this inner journey. If it's not in those things in the outside world, if I'm not going to be able to find it there, then where do I find it? And this was really the universe prompting me to go inside, where this actually all truly lives, independent of our circumstances in the outside world.
Yeah, and I can relate to so much of your story, about climbing the corporate ladder. And for me, I thought that once I reached a certain position, I'd be so happy, and it wasn't further from the truth. I was absolutely miserable, and I felt like I had spent all this time climbing the wrong ladder. For you, Robert, what do you think was the hardest part about leaving the corporate world behind? What challenges did you face?
The hardest part was really we have to unlearn, because we have an understanding of how the world works and what it operates, and we've been brought up with certain cultures and values, and that's why we pursue these things. And the world tells us if you do this and that, and you accomplish this, and you have so many millions in your bank, then you're an important guy. The whole world applauds you. So I really had to reconcile, well, why is the world applauding me? Why does my LinkedIn profile look fantastic? And yet I don't feel inside this is truly meaningful for me. And I'm not saying there's no meaningfulness in any of it, because I had to go on that journey to come to the realization that wasn't it. If I would have never gone on that journey, right? If I would have never operated in that world and sold my soul, so to speak, and got lost myself in greed and malfeasance and all the things I was participatory in, then I would have never realized that is not the way. So today I see all of that as my medicine, because I walked that journey, and I know a lot of other people are in that journey maybe today, and they are wondering, is this all there is? And it's not. And so for those, I have some medicine because I walked that path. And this is kind of how the design of life works out. We all have some medicine for other people. If we have healed certain traumas in our lives, then usually we can be really great teachers to other people that are maybe experiencing that trauma or working through that trauma. And so in various ways, we all have a divine mission that everything, all our trials and tribulations, all our growth and evolution that we have experienced and embodied, it now becomes medicine for other people. And this is really the way I look back on that kind of chapter of my life. I'm really grateful for it. It wasn't always pleasant. I got lost in a lot of things, but a lot of people get lost in a lot of things. And we're here on earth to learn and to fall and to stumble and to find ourselves on our knees begging for mercy, and then well, hold on now. If I fell on my knees by myself, I might be able to get up by myself. And so how do I do this? And I think this is part of the beauty of life, that we have these opportunities, that when crisis, catastrophe, or calamity hits our life, and that can show up, in my case, my business started to falter and fall apart. And so I know I had to deal, and I lost a lot of it. Through a divorce, through business failures, through other things that I created these situations. But now the universe had stripped me naked. So now I didn't even have that anymore. And so for a man that fought his whole life that his worth was his net worth, to lose his net worth is to lose your entire identity. And so I got the opportunity to revisit that and say, is that really true? Is my worth or anybody's worth, is it really what they accumulate in the outside world? Or is there some innate worth to us? Is there some innate value to each one of us, regardless of what we do in the outside world? And so the universe kind of took me on this journey. I was kind of stubborn, so it took a little longer than maybe other people. I wasn't that quick of a student because I was very reluctant to let go of all these beliefs I had about the world. But as Joseph Campbell says, to advance, all fixed ideas must go. And so we have to be willing to look at these belief systems we have, the belief systems of how we believe the world operates and what it's about and what life is about, these existential questions. And we have to be willing to look at them and say, is that actually really true?
Yeah, and it can be really scary too, because we do have these underlying beliefs and we've been programmed for so long that life needs to consist of these certain elements. You go to school, you get a job, you work your 9 to 5, and you do all these certain things. But in reality, I think that a lot of that is a big distraction from the reason why we're really here, and that is to help others. And to your point earlier, we are here to learn. Earth is the toughest school. And through my line of work, I do hypnosis. I do quantum hypnosis. And oftentimes, time and time again, I hear the subconscious minds of my clients will speak to me while they're under hypnosis, and they always say the same thing. And that is, they went through this so that they can help others. So all of the challenges and the trials and the tribulations and the things that we go through is so that we can take those experiences and in turn help others.
I want to take that up one spiritual pay grade, because you get to a point where you realize there are no others. You are everybody else. And so to be in service to others is to be in service to yourself. Have you ever poured love into someone or something and not feel great yourself? Because it feels good. It feels good to love. It feels good to create beauty. It actually feels good to be kind and to feel like you're doing something good, whatever that might be, right? It actually feels good. And so why does it feel good? Because we are all, consciousness is just quantum particles vibrating at certain rates. And this visual illusion of others is just a visual illusion. We're all just a fractal of consciousness going through this earthly experience on this dimension, having an experience with a car. We're all just playing in the same movie together, and we're each just a human avatar that's a costume. We're stepping into this movie called Earth, right? And then we have a movie, and we're all acting and playing and creating in this movie. And then we do this on a collective level, so we don't totally control the outside world because there's all these other actors that are doing a whole bunch of stuff as well. So we can only really control that which we express into this. But every single other person in some way is you. It's a mirror.
Yeah. And again, that is so very true. And I love talking about anything quantum because I do work a lot in the quantum with my clients. But to your point, we are all just one. And I find that over and over again, because through hypnosis, my clients will tell me the same things. And you might say the same thing under hypnosis that someone in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks will say. And it just all reconfirms for me that we truly are all one and we're all connected. Very truthful statements.
Yeah, and then we see things in the world with these conflicts, violent conflicts, armed conflicts that we see. And we see unthinkable things happen and unfolding before us. We're doing, as humanity, to each other, unthinkable things. And when you really dial it back, you say, why is this happening? And we have this human avatar, which is a body, an emotional body, and a mental body. And that's a kind of our human avatar. But what animates that is actually consciousness. And this consciousness, you could say, is your soul. And your soul, what is your soul? It's just a fractal of this all-encompassing consciousness, the all, everything. You can call it God, Creator, Great Spirit, Yahweh, Allah. It doesn't matter what label you put on it, but it's consciousness expressing itself in form and matter. You and I are part of that consciousness expressing itself, having an experience. In my case, there's a guy that was born in Holland. He's 6'5", he's got blue eyes. That's my human avatar. And the human avatar is called Robert, right? That's how people know me. And in your case, it's a woman born in the US, I believe. It's called Jennifer Mitchell. It's just a human avatar. It's just a fractal of consciousness having the experience of being Jennifer Mitchell in this movie. Now, when we get identified at that level, we identify with ideologies and religions and genders and all these other things. I'm not saying those don't exist,
Yeah.
but when we identify with those, we are creating separation by definition. Because now you and I are different. Because you're a woman and I'm a man. So we're already fundamentally different. But actually, what's behind it, right, is a fractal of consciousness animating this costume called Jennifer Mitchell and this costume called Robert Althuis. It's a human costume, right? So if we can relate to each other at that level, there's no separation. We're all just the same. Our human avatars might have different ideas and religions and experiences in life, because my experience would have been very different if I was born as a woman in Pakistan. But I wasn't. I was born as a guy in a relatively well-to-do family in Holland that never experienced hunger, that didn't have any real poverty, because I grew up in a prosperous country, that a school system functioned, and I was taught languages, and I was really set up well for life. Because I was my human avatar, this costume was born in that particular place, with these particular parents that gave me these particular upbringing. And for you, it was different, and for every single person, it's different. But once we can go beyond that and see beyond that, now we have a whole new world that opens up. Because now we can look at everybody, even when they're doing atrocious things, even when they're doing maybe unthinkable things, we can see, in a way, they're innocent. Because they're caught up in identifying with the costume. Because that which is beyond it knows no differences.
I can't wait till humanity reaches a point where we drop out of the head space and more into the heart space, and we can enter into the age of nirvana.
We're in that process, and this is an eternal game. This is an eternal game the universe is playing. It's ever evolving. And people ask, well, why is the universe expanding at such rapid rates? Well, imagine, right, that you and I have experiences 24/7, and there's about 8 billion of us. So just 8 billion of humans have experiences, ideas, everything, every day. Now, that actually doesn't get stored in the universe, because the universe knows everything. And so the universe has to expand, because it has to encapsulate all this evolutionary information. Because every day is basically an evolution. We are evolving every day, and it looks very slow. But all these events, as tragic as they are forcing us to look at it and to look at ourselves and to say, is this really the best we can do? Does this make sense to continue this? And humanity, of course, for thousands of years, we've been very barbaric and savage in many different ways. We've also created beautiful science and beautiful buildings and architecture and music, and we've created all kinds of amazing things as well. But this aspect of us is something that really today, I think, requires more attention than anything else, because where do we want to go as humanity?
And as a collective, our thoughts and feelings and fears even can really shape reality. If we're all focused on everything, to your point, there's beauty in the world and there's also a lot of negativity. But if we are all focused on everything that's going wrong in the world, I think we're just going to continue to propel the world in that direction. Whereas if we focus on the beauty in the world and the positivity, we have the power to really change the world and to change the direction that we're going in.
We change the world with any minuscule thought, idea, because everything is energy and everything lives on forever. Like nothing, every thought is an impulse of energy. We know this scientifically, right? It's an impulse. It goes from a neuron to a neuron. We know that there's an electric impulse there. Now, that electric impulse goes into the universe and it's registered and it will live on forever. If you go far enough in the universe, you can pick up I Love Lucy rerun, because everything lives forever. So everything you create, everything you produce, which is what you speak, what you think, and how you act, all of that lives forever. And to the extent it creates beauty, right? This is the evolutionary process of the universe ever discovering its creative powers. And to the extent it creates ugliness, it's typically rooted in something other than love.
To our listeners out there, I also think that's why it's also so important to be mindful of what we take in. The news, the media, social media, algorithms, and all of the things that we see, they do impact us. They impact our thoughts and our feelings. And so it's really important to be mindful of that as well, everything that we intake.
You can just start really small. Just think of yourself as a little bubble and just say, like, I'm committed to make my world beautiful. And so I'm going to go out of my way to create harmony and unity in my life with whatever I encounter. And that could be your loved ones, your family, your friends, but that extends to everybody you touch on. I had this one client one day who had gone on a 2-week meditation retreat in Tibet. So he basically sat with the monks, said Om all day long. And I think it's a beautiful experience, but I think it's quite meaningless unless it actually changes something in your life, your day-to-day life. And so we happened to be in a grocery store, and he was less than kind to the cashier. And I kind of joked at him. I said, I don't think it worked. And he was looking at me, what do you mean? I said, you sit on the mountain for 2 weeks and you're singing Om and you feel so connected with this whole universe, and you can't even be nice to this person in front of you because in your mind, she means nothing to you. But what if you had it within you to say a nice word? And guess what? When you do that, when you extend kindness to someone, they usually will smile because they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel loved. Even at such a superficial level as a cashier saying, hey, good morning, how's your day going? And maybe you just make her smile a little bit. And then the next customer comes and she's just going to say a kind word because you just activated that within her. And now the ripple effect of this, can you imagine this cascading through society? And people say, well, you're just a nut job. I said, no, but try it. Because everything ripples on. Everything has a knock-on effect. And so you can start really small. And one of the things I realized, going on this Peru trip is like, I cannot solve this conflict in the Middle East. I'm not part of the negotiation table. I cannot take these world leaders and shake them up and say, listen, guys, you're all out of your mind. Look at what you're doing. But what I can do is create kindness and love in my direct surroundings and go out of my way and do that. And that's peace too. And that peace will resonate, and it's all connected.
Your example of the grocery store reminds me of a situation a few weeks ago. I was actually at my local coffee house, and the lady in front of me was not being kind to the cashier. She actually started to yell at her, and she said, what's wrong with you? And she's yelling at her, you can't even get my simple coffee order right. She snapped at the cashier, and it was really hard for me to kind of not say anything and to hold my tongue, because I'm the type of person, I do want to be like, why are you treating them like this? And I was like, that's not going to go well. I just waited till it was my turn. And when I went up to the register, I just said to the lady, I was like, I just want you to know that I appreciate you and you always get my order right. And the work that you do is so important because you touch so many people every day between work and home. And the experience of the coffee shop really kind of plays a big part of my day. And she just smiled and she's like, you don't know how much I needed to hear that. And so to your point, one small gesture of showing someone some kindness and that they're appreciated can really just change like a person's whole day.
100%.
Yeah. When you were talking about that, I was like, oh, this just reminds me of literally almost the exact same experience. Now, Robert, you're also a keynote speaker and you do work with clients private one-on-one. And with your line of work, I know that you work a lot with CEOs and entrepreneurs and even celebrities. Do you find that with your clients, like when we strip away all the titles and everything, as humanity, do we struggle with like the same challenges and the same things that we're trying to overcome at the end of the day?
It's a human challenge. I promise you, and this is hard to understand because if you've never had a lot of money, it's very easy to think that money will solve all your problems. And the aspiration to be famous or to be seen or all those things is really typically driven by not feeling seen, not feeling worthy, not feeling enough, and thinking that once the whole world is adolescent, it's like idolizing you, then all of that problem will be solved. And it actually won't. I mean, there's so much mental and emotional dysfunction equally with people that are famous, people that are wealthy, people that are in places of power or influence, people that on the surface seem to have everything. But we're all looking for this same little diamond inside. And it's our divinity that really lights us up as a human being. And that divinity cannot be found in cars and fame and fortune and applause. And not to say that life is a lot more comfortable if you have money, and it's hard to be spiritual if you don't know where your rent check is going to come from. So I'm not someone to suggest that there's anything wrong with it. We need people leading businesses, and we need great singers, so we can all go to concerts and enjoy their talent. And all of these things are fine. These are all part of the human experience. It's just when we get lost in these things, that's kind of where the wheels come off the bus, because we forget what life is really about. And these people struggle with the exact same things. And this is why there's so much drug abuse and alcohol abuse and all these things, because they're numbing. They're numbing themselves. And in many ways, actually, to be in the limelight and to be at the top of the mountain, and this is maybe hard for some people to hear because they say, that's nonsense. It might even be harder for them in that, how do you fall apart? Like when I fell apart, like I wasn't that famous. I just retreated and again, my whole life just unraveled. I could do it at a level of anonymity. But imagine that you try to discover this within yourself, and you go on this grand odyssey of discovering yourself and finding yourself, and you're going through your dark night of the soul, and your life looks a mess, and things are falling apart, and relationships are falling apart, and you have to read about it in People magazine every week. And people make it a joke, and people find it their business to comment on it. This is actually very, very challenging. And we all love to be featured with our highlights, but what when we go through that dark, we've all been there. We've all had dark places where our life unraveled. We unraveled. It's not pretty. I was a 6'5" guy crying his eyes out in the fetus position under his bed. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I was but it was part of the process. But it wasn't pretty, right? It wasn't like this big masculine alpha guy that can like conquer the world. No, this was like a miserable little ape of a human being. That was just his whole life had fallen apart. But the beauty was, it was a divine gift wrapped in sandpaper. But that we get to find out later when we get to unwrap it, because at first the sandpaper is rough and it's not pretty. And a lot of people have opinions, and some people say not so kind things because you're changing. Your life is changing. Maybe you're changing jobs. Maybe you're changing partners. Maybe you're changing where you live. There's so many different things, changes that you go through. And so imagine having to do that under the scrutiny, or if you're a big time CEO and you have a board of directors you have to report to, you have quarterly earnings you got to produce, and you got employees that are looking you for leadership. You can't confide in anybody. You can't confide into your first lieutenant and say, you know what? I am a complete spiritual mess. I don't have the first iota idea. I'm going for this dark night of the soul.
Could you imagine?
Can you imagine a CEO confiding in a CFO? No. And saying, you just do the numbers right now, man, because I'm going to do a dark night of the soul right now. There's nowhere that they live in great isolation. And so, they do find me. I'm at a place in my life where I don't care about any of those things because I've let all those things go. So fame doesn't mean anything to me because you're as famous to me, Jennifer Lopez coming in. I mean, I don't care because I don't see the costume to me is just a costume because I work with souls. So I don't really care what that costume does or what it represents or what it means to the world. I understand it because I'm of the world, but I don't care about that part. I'm not interested in that part. And if you come to me and you ask me, can you work on my costume with me? I said, no, then you need to go work with Tony Robbins because he'll tell you how to be, more productive, more effective, more lethal in creating the world that we shouldn't be creating anymore. And there's nothing wrong with that either. There's not a judgment. Tony Robbins is fantastic. I mean, he's really good at what he does, but that's not what I do. I'm a soul whisperer. I don't care about your costume. It's just not of relevance to me. Now, once you get your soul in alignment with what you're here to do, now you're going to create all kinds of beauty through that costume. Because now you're in alignment with what you're here to express, what you're here to do. And all your gifts and natural gifts and talents and superpowers are now kind of bursting out of that costume. And that's really where I want your costume to go. That's my only interest in your costume. Other than that, I just want to whisper to your soul and remind it of its true nature, which is divine.
Robert, tell me, what was the inspiration for your book, Love and Truth?
Honestly, I channeled it. So I drove to the beach and it came in as a download. And I wrote it out on the beach. And then the next day, I just really felt compelled. And I was like, I need to start writing this. I don't know why. And love and truth is something that I've been using for 3 years. That came from a story. I was doing a lot of yoga at the time, and all the yoga teachers always say, love and light, and love and light, and there is love and light, and think positive, and love and light. And I was going through a period in my life. I was like, I'm sorry, but that's bullshit. Life is not all love and light. There's actually a lot of darkness in life. There's a lot of darkness in me. And this is what I'm being asked to transmute. And so I was like, love and darkness doesn't sound so good. And then I was like, well, what am I really after? What is this process all about? And it's really all about truth. It's eradicating all falsehoods from our lives so we can live in truth, the higher truth, right?
Talking about the experience of channeling the book, did you realize that you were channeling at that time? And is that the first time you ever channeled anything?
My claircognizance and clairsentience came online in 2015 in its spontaneous awakening. And I know a little bit about it because there's on my maternal lineage, there is some clairvoyance and clairsentience. So my mom and my grandfather, and so I'm not unfamiliar with it. I just didn't know really that I had it. And I was using it in business all along. I just didn't really know what it was. It was just an intuitive gift. But then it cultivated and it really opened up when my crown chakra opened up. And the way I channel is a little bit different than some others. I went to Delphi University in Georgia to study this a little bit more. I became a certified medium. And so when you have people like Paul Selig and Daryl Anka and Lincoln Gergar, who's a friend of mine, these are phenomenal channelers, but they are a vessel for a celestial entity that channels through them. And they are still great spiritual teachers in their own right because their consciousness need to be at a certain elevated level for that celestial entity to even channel through them. So I'm taking nothing away from these fantastic, and they're great, and I listen to them, and I think they have beautiful teachings and beautiful work that they produce. My channeling is a little bit different. I channel my own higher self. And so your soul is really in the nonlinear spiritual realm, and I connect with my higher self, or the old wisdom part of my soul, and that lives in a certain celestial consciousness that I'm part of. And that's really all I want to talk about it, because I don't like to dwell on that too much, because that suggests that I'm special. And what my message is really more about, and what my book is all about, is that each of us have this hardwiring and this capacity. Now, for me, I went through an awakening. I went through certain experiences. Maybe I've got some prior lives where this was part of what I did. And so for me, it was relatively easy once it came online to cultivate it, understand it. But it still took me 6-7 years to get to this place where I am today. But everybody has this within them. Everybody's hardwiring, everybody's DNA allows this to do. But you have to basically pierce the veil between the soul and the human avatar. And so as long as you are identified with your human avatar, you're kind of unaware and innocent of whatever this soul might be that animates you, this whole awareness. You have no idea. You're identified with your thoughts, your body, and your emotions. And you just think you're that. Now, once you awaken, basically that veil, that very thin veil between that aspect of you and your soul kind of ruptures, very slightly at first. And then you start having these occurrences like, I am actually not my thoughts. I'm actually observing these thoughts. Well, now you're stepping into the consciousness, your soul, whatever you want to call it, that is the awareness. And awareness is one constituent attribute of consciousness. The other one is intelligence and energy. I describe all of this in detail in my book. And this is really the process of awakening. And awakening goes through stages, because this soul is endless. It's eternal. It's as deep as the universe. It goes as far as God goes. And so the stages of awakening, those don't really end. But here on Earth, it ends when your consciousness levels out at around 2000, which is called Christ consciousness. And this 1000, actually, that was the map of consciousness that David Hawkins developed. It's scientifically tested with muscle testing. And this is where the Buddha and Jesus and some of the greatest teachers that have ever walked the earth. And that is the potential of your human avatar. That's the level of consciousness it can hold. Now, beyond that, you don't need to come back here on Earth, because beyond that, you go to different realms because the human avatar can only hold consciousness up to that vibration. Now, that's a very high vibration. For most people, you only have to worry about that as the North Star, not so much worrying about getting there in this lifetime. because there's a lot of evolutionary growth to get to that place, right?
A lot, for sure. I could just talk with you all day, Robert, but I think it's definitely time to call this one. I'd love if you could tell listeners, though, a little bit about where they can find you online and also any upcoming projects that you have next that you're working on.
Well, this is my second book, Love and Truth. My first book, I have a copy of it here. It's called Never Enough Itis. Both of those are on Amazon, and Never Enough Itis is an audio book as well. So you can find them there at all major booksellers, Barnes and Nobles, all the other ones, online bookstores. They should have copies of this. You can find me online on their website at www.robertaltuis.com. You can sign up. You get some free information and booklets. One is about awakening, if that interests you. I am on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok. I am on Twitter, but I don't do too much there, to tell you the truth, because my stuff is a little bit more long content. I don't think 25-second or 3-word sentences really add much to the conversation. My content is a little longer. I have a YouTube channel as well where you can find various YouTubes I've done or videos I've done over time. So many different ways to reach out to me as well. You'll find them in all those different places. But get a copy of Love and Truth. It's a beautiful Christmas read. It's a beautiful, appropriate time in the evolution of humanity, I think, because I'm a very practical guy. I come from a practical background. And so I think Love and Truth is kind of this bridge between, well, how do we do this worldly thing where we do have to pay bills and drive a car and have schools to pay for our kids and things like that? And then how do we also merge that with this spiritual aspect of ourselves? And hopefully my book is kind of a roadmap on how to do that and how to step into that, how to see yourself as a spiritual poet.
Well, I can't wait to read it, and I'll definitely provide the links to your books in the notes for listeners with all of your contact details for anybody who is interested in working with Robert and purchasing the book. And to our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. And Robert, thank you so much for coming on the show again. It's been lovely reconnecting with you.
I love talking about this. This is really what's of interest to me, to share this and really share that there's actually a lot of reason for optimism. Despite everything we're seeing in the world, we're on this evolutionary process to a far more refined and spiritually mature world. And it's just not the prettiest of processes to get there, because we have to let go of those things that are holding us back from creating that more beautiful world. And that's really the process we're in. But it's actually a beautiful process.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today, Robert. And to everyone tuning in, bye for now.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Jennifer.
This podcast is brought to you by the Soul Experience, Quantum Healing Hypnosis. Are you ready to embark on an inward journey of quantum healing? Quantum healing hypnosis is the most profound method of inner work and self-healing someone can do while on a spiritual path. In a single session, you experience past life regression, exploration between lifetimes, self-healing performed by your subconscious, release of trapped trauma, and answers to your most important life questions. Your higher self has a message for you and is here to help you and guide you on this life journey. Book a session today with Jennifer Mitchell at thesoulexperiences.com.